They called him the little genius boy, but not in a good way. In the colony of Vera, humans were small and weak compared to the alien Zirans, tall feline creatures with golden eyes and sharp claws. They moved with grace and spoke in sounds that humans could not understand. Most humans were afraid of them, and most Zirans thought humans were nothing more than silly, weak creatures. Elias was small even for a human. His hair was always messy and his glasses were too big for his face. He did not run fast or lift heavy things like other boys. But his mind was different. He noticed patterns, small details, and strange connections that others missed. The Zirans laughed at him when he tried to follow their movements. Even his own classmates teased him. "Why do you waste your time watching them, little Elias? They are cats. They will never care about you." Elias felt their words sting, but he did not answer. He would watch the Zirans in silence. He could not yet understand their gestures or the strange sounds they made, but he could see something others did not. Their tails flicked in rhythm. Their ears twitched at certain moments. Their claws scratched in patterns that repeated. He began to write notes, small sketches, and observations in a hidden notebook. One day the Zirans came closer to the human settlement. The children were told to stay behind fences. Most of them hid in fear, whispering to each other about how scary the aliens looked. Elias, however, moved carefully to the edge of the enclosure. He watched a small group of Zirans as they played a strange game. They jumped, circled, and made low humming sounds. Some of the humans laughed, saying Elias would get hurt. "Don't you see?" they mocked. "They don't care about your notebook or your silly scribbles." But Elias saw a rhythm. The Zirans' movements were not random. When one of them hissed softly, another turned in a certain way. When a tail flicked twice, the others responded with a low hum. Elias' heart raced. Could it be that they were not just moving for fun? Could they be communicating? At night, Elias stayed awake. He studied his notes, compared gestures, and tried to draw connections. He noticed that certain sounds matched movements, and certain tail flicks seemed to mean something. He whispered to himself, "It's a language, they have words even if I don't know them yet." The thought made him smile. The next day at the academy, the other children laughed again. "Look at him staring at the aliens like they will answer him," one said. "Maybe he wants to be eaten." Elias did not look up. He had learned to ignore the teasing. Inside he was planning, thinking, imagining. If he could understand the Zirans' language, humans might have a chance to survive better on this planet. They might even be able to defend themselves or know what the aliens were planning. During recess, he followed a small Ziran named Clyra, who seemed less aggressive than the others. She crouched low, ears forward, watching the human children. Elias stayed a safe distance away, but he observed every twitch, every low growl, every subtle flick of her tail. When she hissed softly, a larger Ziran moved away. Elias scribbled down every detail. Nobody noticed him. Nobody cared. But he felt closer than ever to understanding something incredible. One evening, his father asked him, "Elias, why do you waste your time with them? You should be playing, learning human things." Elias looked up, eyes shining. "Father, they are not just animals. They talk to each other. I think I can learn their language." His father shook his head, worried, but Elias could not stop thinking about it. Days turned into weeks. Each observation, each note, brought him closer to understanding. The other children continued to mock him. Even the teachers laughed a little, calling his fascination pointless curiosity. But Elias did not care. Every flick of a tail, every hum, every movement was a clue. He felt alive in a way he had never felt before. One afternoon, the colony announced a demonstration. Zirans would show human children some of their skills. The children lined up, hiding behind fences. The Zirans leaped, hissed, and performed incredible feats. Most of the children gasped and stepped back. Elias stepped forward, notebook in hand. He watched closely, not with fear, but with attention. He noticed patterns, connections, rhythms, things that others did not see. He whispered to himself, "I will understand you. I will learn your words." For the first time, a small Ziran sat still and watched him. Its golden eyes fixed on Elias as if it knew he was different. Elias felt a thrill, a spark of hope. Perhaps this was the moment his life would change. Perhaps the little human boy who everyone mocked would be the one to finally understand the Zirans. And so, while the world laughed, Elias began the first step of something extraordinary. He would not fight with strength. He would not fight with claws or weapons. He would fight with his mind. And one day the Zirans would have no choice but to notice him. Elias could not stop thinking about the Zirans. Every day after lessons he sneaked away to watch them. He followed them quietly in the open fields near the colony. He studied their movements, their sounds, and the way their tails flicked in different directions. Every small action seemed to mean something. He was sure now, the Zirans had a language and he wanted to learn it. The other children laughed when they saw him. Still staring at the cats, little genius, one shouted. Why don't you play like a human? Elias ignored them. He knew they did not understand. He was not playing, he was learning. One day he noticed a small pattern. When a Ziran moved its tail slowly, it made a soft purring sound. Another Ziran would respond with a low hiss. Sometimes the tail flicked once, and the others would turn toward a particular direction. Elias quickly drew diagrams in his notebook. He copied the movements, the sounds, and the reactions. He whispered to himself, each movement is like a word, each sound is like a sentence. Elias decided to test his theory. He hid behind a rock and mimicked the tail flick and soft hum he had observed earlier. At first nothing happened. But after a moment, one Ziran turned toward him and tilted its head. Its golden eyes stared at Elias, studying him. His heart beat fast. Could it be that the Ziran understood him? He tried again, this time combining the flick with a hiss he had noted. The Ziran crouched, then looked back at the other Zirans. They stopped and stared as if confused. Elias felt a small victory. He had done something no other human had tried. He had made the Zirans notice him, not with weapons, not with strength, but with understanding. Over the next few days he studied more. He learned that certain gestures meant warning, others meant play or curiosity. He noticed that Zirans often repeated the same movements in sequences. He realized that if he could understand the sequence, he could predict what they would do next. But learning was not easy. Sometimes he copied a gesture wrong and the Zirans hissed angrily. Other times they ignored him completely. He felt frustrated, but he refused to give up. He stayed late into the evening, comparing his notes, testing small movements, and trying to understand their patterns. One morning, a young Ziran approached him. Elias froze. It was unusual for them to come close without warning. The Ziran crouched low, ears forward, and stared at him. Elias remembered the small gesture he had practiced, a slow tail flick combined with a soft hum. He tried it carefully. The Ziran's eyes widened. It tilted its head, then made a tiny purring sound. Elias' heart raced. It was a response. It was communicating back. He could hardly believe it. No human had ever interacted with the Zirans this way. The other children did not see it. They were busy mocking him as usual. Talking to the cats again? One said. Elias ignored them. He was focused. He could feel the Ziran's attention and he knew he was making progress. Elias continued to practice. He learned that the Zirans used their ears and tails in combination with sounds to form messages. A flick of the tail could mean look there, or danger ahead. A low hiss could mean stay close or move away. The combinations were endless, but Elias was patient. He wrote everything down in his notebook, carefully drawing each gesture, sound, and meaning. One day, while observing a group of Zirans near a cliff, Elias noticed something alarming. They were preparing to move toward the human colony. Their gestures were sharp, urgent, and repeated. Elias' stomach tightened. He realized he could understand some of their warnings. They were planning something, but he did not know exactly what. He rushed back to the colony, notebook in hand, trying to explain what he had seen. The other children laughed. What are you doing, Elias? You think you can understand them? You're crazy. The teachers shook their heads. Stop wasting your time, they said. The Zirans will never care about humans. Elias did not argue. He only said, I know something is coming. I can understand them. Please just listen. Nobody listened. That night, Elias stayed awake again. He studied his notes, repeating gestures and sounds softly. The young Ziran that had responded before sometimes came near the edge of the field. Elias whispered to it in soft movements and sounds, trying to communicate. The Ziran watched him carefully, then left. But Elias felt a small connection. For the first time he felt he was on the same level, at least a little, with these creatures. Days passed. The Zirans became more active near the colony. Elias noticed patterns in their hunting practice, their games, and their signals. Each time he tried to mimic them. Sometimes he failed and they hissed at him. Sometimes he succeeded and they paused and studied him. Each success gave him courage. Elias knew he was not strong, but he had something more important. He had patience, observation, and intelligence. While the humans laughed, he understood that the real power was not in muscles or weapons. The real power was knowledge, understanding, and thinking ahead. And so, the little human genius boy continued. He watched, he noted, he learned. The Zirans were still stronger and faster, but Elias knew that one day the knowledge he was gathering could change everything. The humans had been mocked for being weak, but perhaps, with understanding, they could survive and even win. For Elias, this was only the beginning. Elias had spent weeks watching the Zirans. Every day he wrote more notes, drew more diagrams, and tested small movements and sounds. Slowly he began to see a pattern. The Zirans did not just move randomly. Their tail flicks, ear twitches, and soft hisses were connected. They were using a language, a real language. Elias' heart raced every time he discovered a new connection. He realized something important: their language was not just sounds. Their body movements mattered just as much. A flick of the tail combined with a low hum could mean danger ahead. A quick ear twitch with a hiss could mean come closer or stay alert. He began to copy the movements exactly, testing each combination in secret. One morning, Elias hid behind a rock near the edge of the colony. A group of Zirans passed by, moving in a formation he had seen many times. He tried to mimic the gestures, flicking his arms like tails and humming softly. One Ziran paused, stared at him with wide golden eyes, and tilted its head. Elias froze. The creature was watching him closely. He tried again, this time more carefully. He combined a tail-like flick with a low, steady hum. The Ziran responded with a soft purr. Elias' chest swelled. It was a response. A real response. He ran home that evening, clutching his notebook. "Father. Father. I think I can really understand them," he shouted. His father looked worried. "Be careful, Elias. They are not pets. They are dangerous." Elias nodded but did not stop. He could feel that he was close to something incredible. Elias spent the next days creating a decoding system. He used small pieces of metal, wires, and scraps from the colony's workshop to make a device that could record the Ziran's sounds. He paired each sound with the movements he had observed. Slowly he built a small dictionary of gestures, sounds, and meanings. He tested the system in secret, showing it only to himself. He pointed to a sound on the device, then made the matching gesture. The Ziran paused, looked, and reacted as if it understood. Elias could hardly believe it. No human had ever communicated with the Zirans this way. He was learning their language. But the challenge was greater than he thought. Some Zirans were unpredictable. A flick of the tail could mean one thing in one situation and another in a different situation. Elias studied the context, the time, the position, and the reactions. Every detail mattered. He stayed awake late into the night, scribbling notes, drawing charts, and practicing the gestures over and over. One afternoon, a small Ziran came close to the edge of the field, staring at him. Elias held his breath. He moved his hands in a slow flick, hummed softly, and tilted his head like the Zirans did. The creature stepped forward cautiously, then sat down. It made a low, soft sound that Elias recognized as a friendly greeting. He whispered, "Hello. I am Elias. I want to learn." The Ziran tilted its head again as if replying, but in its own language. Elias smiled. He had made his first real conversation. He realized something powerful. This was more than observation. This was understanding. If he could fully learn the language, humans could know the Zirans' plans. Humans could avoid danger, predict attacks, and maybe even make allies. Elias felt a mix of fear and excitement. The knowledge he was gaining could save lives. That night, Elias worked on his notebook like never before. He categorized the sounds, tail flicks, and ear movements. He wrote down each possible combination and its meaning. Slowly the patterns became clear. The Zirans' language was complex, but it was logical. Their thoughts, their warnings, their intentions were all there, waiting for someone clever enough to decode them. Days later, Elias tested his knowledge on a larger group. He mimicked a warning signal he had learned, a combination of low hums and tail flicks. One Ziran paused, then turned and gestured toward a rockfall nearby. Elias realized he had understood the warning correctly. His heart pounded. If humans had been here, they would have been safe. Word of his progress spread quietly among a few humans, though most still laughed. "He talks to cats," one said. "He is wasting his time." But Elias did not care. He knew the truth. The Zirans had a language and he could speak it. Then came the moment that would change everything. While observing the Zirans near a ridge, Elias heard something alarming. Their tail signals and low hums indicated movement, fast, urgent movement. He looked closer and realized they were planning something. Perhaps an ambush on the human settlement. His stomach tightened. Humans had no idea. Only Elias could understand them. He ran back to his small lab, writing notes faster than ever. He had to finish decoding as much as possible before the Zirans acted. Every gesture, every sound, every signal counted. He worked late into the night, connecting meanings, predicting actions, and testing small responses. He was ready. Elias finally realized the full power of his work. He was small, weak, and mocked, but now he had a weapon that mattered more than claws or teeth. He could understand the Zirans. He could warn humans. He could plan. For the first time he felt that humans had a chance. He smiled quietly to himself. Soon the humans would stop laughing. Soon the Zirans would notice him, not as a weak boy but as someone clever, someone dangerous in a way they had never expected. Elias had broken the barrier between species, and nothing would ever be the same. He was not just a boy. He was a human genius, learning to speak the language of predators. Elias could feel the weight of what he had learned. The Zirans were planning something near the colony. Their tail flicks, ear twitches, and low hums told him everything. Humans had no idea what was coming. Most still laughed at him, thinking he was just playing with animals. But Elias knew better. He held his notebook tightly and ran to warn the colony leaders. "Listen to me," he shouted. "The Zirans are moving toward the settlement. I know what they are saying. We have time to prepare, but only if you act now." The humans stared at him. "Elias, you're just a boy. How could you understand them?" one council member asked. Elias opened his notebook and began explaining what he had learned. He showed them the gestures, the sounds, and the signals. He explained the warnings he had seen and how to respond. Slowly the leaders began to understand. Elias worked with the humans to plan a defense. They built barriers, created traps, and set warning systems, all based on the Zirans' movements. Elias taught them how to recognize the alien signals so they could predict their attacks. For the first time humans were not afraid. They had knowledge, and knowledge was power. When the Zirans approached, the humans were ready. The aliens moved in formation, their golden eyes glowing, tails flicking, and low hums signaling their strategy. Elias watched closely, reading every gesture. "They will split into two groups," he whispered. "One will circle the left. The other will come from the right. Wait for it." The humans held their ground. As the Zirans advanced, they stepped into traps set by Elias. Nets fell from trees, alarms blared, and humans moved quickly to avoid danger. The Zirans hissed in confusion, their signals becoming disorganized. Elias noticed their frustration. They had not expected humans to understand their language or anticipate their moves. Elias acted quickly. He mimicked a warning gesture, using the tail-like movement he had learned. One of the Zirans paused, looked at him, and then at the humans. Elias repeated the signal, and the Zirans hesitated, unsure what to do next. The humans pressed forward carefully, avoiding attacks and using their new knowledge to outmaneuver the aliens. The battle was tense, but Elias' understanding of the Zirans' language made the difference. Humans moved like a single team, predicting the Zirans' actions and countering them at every step. For the first time humans were not weak. They were clever, fast, and coordinated. One Ziran leader, larger and more aggressive than the others, approached Elias. It hissed and crouched, ready to attack. Elias held his notebook and moved slowly, copying a sequence of gestures he had observed before. The Ziran froze, watching him. He repeated the movements, added a low hum, and tilted his head. The creature blinked, then stepped back. Elias realized it understood him. The other Zirans noticed too. They paused, looking at Elias and the humans. Their confidence faltered. They had never faced a species that could understand them. Elias' small size and quiet determination had turned the tide. Humans pressed forward, using the Zirans' own patterns against them. Traps worked perfectly. Signals that once warned the aliens of danger now confused them. Elias guided the humans carefully, predicting every step. Slowly the Zirans retreated, unsure and frustrated. When the battle ended, the humans were exhausted but victorious. They had survived, and they had done more than survive. They had won without weapons as strong as the Zirans' claws or teeth. They had used their minds. And it was all thanks to Elias. The other children, the ones who had mocked him for weeks, now stared in awe. You did it," one whispered. Elias only smiled. He had never fought for glory. He had fought to understand, to learn, and to keep humans safe. That had been enough. The Zirans, confused by the humans' cleverness, began retreating toward their territory. Elias noticed their gestures had changed. They were cautious, respectful, and curious. It was the first time humans had earned a small measure of respect from the alien predators. Elias felt a thrill. He had done it. He had turned mockery into victory. That night, Elias wrote in his notebook, recording every detail of the battle. He noted the signals, the gestures, and the sounds that had made the difference. Humans had learned more than how to survive. They had learned how to communicate with the aliens, how to anticipate them, and how to think like them. Elias looked at the stars above the colony. The Zirans had been strong, faster, and more dangerous, but humans had outsmarted them. All because a little boy had watched, learned, and understood. All because a little boy had refused to be mocked. He smiled quietly. Tomorrow humans would continue learning, building, and preparing. But tonight they could rest. They had survived an attack that would have destroyed them before. And they owed it all to the boy who spoke the language of the predators. Elias knew this was just the beginning. The humans had won today, but the galaxy was full of dangers. Still, with intelligence, courage, and careful observation, they could face anything. For the first time he truly believed that humans were not weak. They were clever. They were strong in ways the universe could not ignore. And Elias, once mocked and laughed at, was no longer just a boy. He was a human genius, a protector, and a symbol of what humans could achieve when they used their greatest weapon, their minds. The morning after the battle, the colony was quiet but full of energy. Humans moved carefully, repairing barriers and checking traps. They still looked at Elias differently now, not as a small, silly boy but as someone who had saved them. Some of the children whispered, "He understood them, the aliens." Even the council nodded with respect, though they tried not to show it too much. Elias, however, was not thinking about praise. He had something bigger in mind. He wanted to talk to the Zirans, to use the language he had learned not just for defense but for understanding. If humans could speak to the Zirans, maybe they would stop being enemies altogether. He went to the edge of the colony, notebook in hand. A small group of Zirans was nearby, watching him cautiously. Their tails flicked slowly and their ears twitched in alert. Elias took a deep breath. He moved slowly, copying the gestures he had studied for weeks, and made the soft hums that matched their language. One Ziran, the same small one that had first approached him weeks ago, stepped forward. Its golden eyes were wide, watching Elias carefully. The boy tilted his head, flicked his arms like tails, and made the softest hum he could. To his relief, the creature responded with a low purr and a slight ear twitch. Elias' heart raced. It understood him. He moved a little closer, keeping his gestures gentle. The Zirans did not hiss or attack. They watched. Slowly, Elias began combining gestures and hums to form simple messages. "We are humans. We want peace. We can learn together." It was strange, almost magical, to communicate with creatures so different from humans. The Zirans tilted their heads, exchanged low hums, and even flicked their tails in ways Elias could interpret. It was not perfect, but they understood each other. For the first time, humans and Zirans were speaking across the species divide. Back at the colony, humans watched in amazement. They had never imagined that communication was possible. "He is really talking to them," one whispered. "He is teaching them?" Another nodded, eyes wide. Elias smiled quietly, knowing that understanding could prevent future battles. Over the next few days, Elias continued his work. He learned more of the Zirans' gestures, hisses, and tail movements. He practiced combining them into longer sentences, simple questions, and warnings. He realized that Zirans were intelligent, curious, and capable of learning. They were not just enemies, they were another species with thoughts, feelings, and a language waiting to be understood. The humans began to see the value of Elias' work. They no longer mocked him. Instead, they learned from him, watching and copying his gestures. Slowly, the colony built a small team to observe and communicate with the Zirans. They learned to respect them not as predators but as beings who could be understood. One evening, a Ziran leader approached Elias. It was larger and older than the others, its golden eyes sharp and careful. Elias held his hands in the familiar gestures and made soft hums. The creature studied him, then responded with a sequence of tail flicks and ear twitches. Elias understood, "We respect your cleverness. We will observe, not attack." Elias felt a rush of pride and relief. Humans had earned respect, not through violence but through knowledge and courage. The Zirans were no longer threats. They were beings who could coexist with humans. Elias had changed the balance not with strength but with understanding. That night, Elias sat under the stars and wrote in his notebook. He recorded everything: the gestures, the hums, the meanings, and the responses. This knowledge would be shared with humans so that future generations could live safely and wisely alongside the Zirans. He knew that one day humans might even travel further into the galaxy, carrying the lessons of understanding and respect with them. For the first time, Elias felt truly proud of who he was. He had been mocked, laughed at, and underestimated. Yet he had done something no one else could. He had learned the language of a powerful alien species, turned fear into respect, and given humans a chance to survive and thrive. The colony celebrated quietly, but Elias did not need applause. He watched the Zirans moving nearby, tails flicking gently, ears twitching. They were watching him, studying him, learning to trust him. And Elias knew that trust was worth more than victory. As he looked at the stars, he thought about the future. There would be challenges ahead, but humans now had a new weapon: their mind. Their patience, observation, and courage could achieve more than strength ever could. Elias smiled, knowing that he had shown the universe what humans were capable of. He was still small, still young, and still underestimated by many. But now he was a bridge between two species, a symbol of human genius, and proof that even the weakest could achieve greatness through understanding. Elias whispered to himself, softly, in the language of the Zirans, "We can live together. We can survive. We can learn." And for the first time, the Zirans replied with a series of soft hums and tail flicks that Elias understood perfectly. "Yes. We will try. We will learn." Elias smiled, knowing that the little human genius boy who had once been mocked had finally earned respect, and had changed the future of both species forever.